He knew something, some fear can be good. When you are afraid things are going to get worse if you don't do something, it can prompt you into action, but it is not good when you are so afraid that it keeps you from doing anything. He looked to his right to the part of the maze where he had never been and felt the fear. Then he took a deep breath and turned right into the maze and jogged slowly into the unknown. As he tried to find his way, how worried at first that he might have waited too long in cheese station. See, he hadn't had any cheese for so long that he was now weak. It took him longer and it was more painful than usual to get through the maze. He decided that if he ever got the chance again, he would get out of his comfort zone and adapt to change sooner. It would make things easier than how a weak smile as he thought, better late than never. During the next several days, Haw found a little cheese here and there, but nothing that lasted very long. He had hoped to find enough cheese to take some back to him and encourage him to come out into the maze. But Haw didn't feel confident enough yet. He had to admit he found it confusing in the maze. Things seems to have changed since the last time he was out here. Just when he thought he was getting ahead, he would get lost in the corridor. It seems his progress was two steps forward and one step backward. It was a challenge, but he had to admit that being back in the maze hunting for cheese wasn't nearly as bad as he feared it might be. As time went on, he began to wonder if it was realistic for him to expect to find new cheese. He wondered if he had bitten off more than he could chew. Then he laughed, realizing that he had nothing to chew on at that moment. Whenever he started to get discouraged, he reminded himself that what he was doing, as uncomfortable as it was, the movement was in reality much better than staying in the cheeseless situation. He was taking control rather than simply letting things happen to him. Then he reminded himself, if Sniven Scurry could move on, so could he. Later, as Hall looked back on things, he realized that the cheese at Cheese Station C had not just disappeared overnight, as he had once believed. The amount of cheese that had been there towards the end had been getting smaller, and what was left had grown old. It didn't taste as good. Mold may even have begun to grow on the old cheese, although he hadn't noticed it. He had to admit, however, that if he had wanted to, he probably could have seen what was coming, but he didn't. Howe now realized that the change probably would not have taken him by surprise if he had been watching what was happening all along and if he had anticipated change. Maybe that's what the Snivens curry had been doing. He decided he would stay more alert from now. He would expect change to happen and look for it. He would trust his basic instincts to sense when change was going to occur and be ready to adopt it. He stopped for a rest and wrote on the wall of the maze. Smell the cheese often so you know when is it is getting old. Sometimes later, after not finding cheese for what seems like a long time, Haw finally came across a huge cheese station which looked promising. When he went inside, however, he was most disappointed to discover that the cheese station was empty. This empty feeling has happened to me too often. He thought he felt like giving up. Hall was losing his physical strength. He knew he was lost and was afraid he would not survive. He thought about turning around and heading back to Cheese Station C. At least if he had it back and Ham was still there, Hall wouldn't be alone. Then he asked himself the same question again. What would I do if I weren't afraid? Haw thought he was past his fear, but he was afraid more often than he liked to admit. Even to himself, he wasn't always sure what he was afraid of, but in his weakened condition, he knew now he was simply fearful of going on alone. How didn't know it, but he was running behind because he was still weighed down by fearful belief. How wondered if he How wondered if Ham had moved on or if he was still paralyzed by his own fear. Then Haw remembered the times when he had felt his best in maze. It was when he was moving along. He wrote on the wall, knowing it was as much a reminder to himself as it was a marking for his friend Ham, hopefully to follow. Movement in the new direction helps you find new cheese. Hall looked down the dark passageway and was aware of his fear. What lay ahead? Was it empty? Or worse, were there dangers lurking? He began to imagine all kinds of frightening things that could happen to him. He was scaring himself to death. Then he laughed at himself. He realized his fears were making things worse, so he did what he would do if he weren't afraid. He moved in a new direction. As he started running down the dark corridor, he began to smile. How didn't realize it yet, but he was discovering what nourished his soul. He was letting go and trusting what lay ahead for him. Even though he did not know exactly what it was. To his surprise, Hal started to enjoy himself more and more. Why do I feel as good? He wondered. I don't have any cheese and I don't know where I am going. Before long, he knew why he felt good. He stopped to write again on the wall. When you stop being afraid, you feel good. Or realized he had been held captive by his own fear. Moving in a new direction had freed him. Now he felt the cool breeze that was blowing in this part of the maze and it was refreshing. He took in some deep breath and felt invigorated by the movement. Once he had gotten past his fear, it turned out to be more enjoyable than he once believed it could be. Hall hadn't felt this way for a long time. He had almost forgotten how much fun it was to go for it. To make things even better, Hall started to paint a picture in his mind again. He saw himself in great realistic detail sitting in the middle of a pile of all his favorite cheese from cheddar to brie. He saw himself eating the many cheese he liked and he enjoyed what he saw. That he imagined how much he would enjoy all their great taste. The more clearly he saw the image of himself enjoying new cheese, the more real and believable it became. He could sense that he was going to find it. He wrote, imagine yourself enjoying your new cheese leads you to it. How kept thinking about what he could gain instead of what he was losing. He wondered why he had always thought that a change would lead to something worse. Now he realized that change could lead to something better. Why didn't I see this before? He asked himself. Then he raced through the maze with greater strength and agility. Before long, he spotted a cheese station and became excited as he noticed little pieces of new cheese near the entrance. They were types of cheese he had seen before, but they looked great. He tried them and found that they were delicious. He ate most of the new cheese bites that were available and put a few in his pocket to have later and perhaps share with Ham. He begins to regain his strength. He entered the cheese station with a great excitement, but to his dismay, he found it was empty. Someone had already been there and had left only the few bits of new cheese. He realized that if he had moved sooner, he would very likely have found a good deal of new cheese here. Haw decided to go back and see if Ham was ready to join him. As he retraced his step, he stopped and wrote on the wall, "The quicker you let go of old cheese, the sooner you find new cheese." After a while, Haw made his way back to Cheese Station C and found Ham. He offered him bits of new cheese but was turned down. Ham appreciated his friend's gesture but said, "I don't think I would like new cheese. It's not what I'm used to. I want my own cheese back and I am not going to change until I get what I want." Hodges shook his head in disappointment and reluctantly went back out in on his own. As he returned to the farthest point he had reached in the maze. He missed his friend but realized he liked what he was discovering even before he found what he hoped would be a great supply of new cheese. If ever he knew that he made him happy wasn't just having cheese. He was happy when he wasn't being run by his fear. He liked what he was doing now. Knowing this, he didn't feel as weak as he did when he stayed in Cheese Station C and with no cheese. Just realizing he was not letting his fear stop him and knowing that he had taken a new direction nourished him and gave him strength. Now he felt that it was just a question of time before he found what he needed. In fact, he sensed he had already found what he was looking for. He smiled as he realized it is safer to search in the maze than remain in a cheeseless situation. Hall realized again, as he had once before, what you are afraid of is never as bad as what you imagine. The fear you let build you in your mind is worse than the situation that actually exists. Had been so afraid of never finding new cheese that hadn't even want to start looking. But since the start his journey, he had found enough cheese in the corridors to keep him going. Now he looked forward to finding more. Just looking ahead was becoming exciting. His old thinking had been clouded by his worries and fear. He used to think about not having enough cheese or not having it last as long as he wanted. He used to think more about what could go wrong than what could go right. But that had changed in the days since he had left Cheese Station C. He used to believe that cheese should never be moved and that change wasn't right. Now he realized it was natural for change to continually occur whether you accept it or not. Change could surprise you only if you didn't expect it and weren't looking for it. When he realized he had changed his belief, he paused to write on the wall. Old belief do not lead you to new cheese. Hod hadn't found any cheese yet, but as he ran through the maze, he thought about what he had already learned. Haw now realized that his new beliefs were encouraging new behaviors. He was behaving differently than when he kept returning to the same cheeseless situation. He knew that when you change what you believe, you change what you do. You can believe that a change will harm you and resist it, or you can believe that finding new cheese will help you and embrace the change. It all depends on what you choose to believe, he wrote on the wall. When you see that you can find and enjoy new cheese, you change course. He knew he would be in better shape now if he had dealt with the change much sooner and left Jesus Station C earlier. He would feel stronger in body and spirit, and he could have coped better with the challenge of finding new cheese. In fact, he probably would have found it by now if he had expected change rather than wasting time denying that the change had already taken place. He used his imagination again and saw himself finding and savoring new cheese. He decided to proceed into the more unknown parts of the maze and found little bits of cheese here and there. Hall began to regain his strength and confidence as he thought back on where he had come from. Hall was glad he had written on the wall in many places. He trusted that it would serve as a mark trail for him to follow through the maze if he ever chose to leave Cheese Station C. Hall just hoped he was heading in the right direction. He thought about the possibility that Ham would read the handwriting of the wall and find his way. He wrote on the wall what he had been thinking about for some time. Noticing small changes early help you adapt to the bigger change that are to come. By now, Haw had to let go of the past and was adapting to the present. He continued on through the maze with the greater strength and speed, and before long it happened. When it seems like had been in the maze forever, his journey, or at least this part of his journey, ended quickly and happily. He proceeded along a corridor that was new to him, rounded a corner, and found a new cheese at cheese station. And when he went inside, he was startled by what he saw. Pile high everywhere was the greatest supply of cheese he had ever seen. He didn't recognize all that he saw as some kind of cheese were new to him. Then he wondered for a moment whether it was real or just his imagination until he saw his old friend Sniff and Scurry. Sniff welcomed Haw with a nod of his head and Scurry waved his paw. Their fat little bellies showed that they had been here for some time. Haw quickly said his hellos and soon took bites of every one of his favorite cheese. He pulled off his shoes, tied the laces together, and hung them around his neck in case he needed them again. Sniff and Scurry laughed. They nodded their heads in admir- admiration. Admiration. Then Haw jumped into the new cheese. When he had eaten his fill, he lifted a piece of fresh cheese and made a toast hooray for change. As he enjoyed the new cheese, he reflected on what he had learned. He realized that when he had been afraid to change, he had been holding on to illusion of old cheese that was no longer there. So, what was it that made him change? Was it the fear of starving to death? How smiled as he thought it could really help. Then he laughed and realized that he had started to change as soon as he had learned to laugh at himself and at what he had been doing wrong. He realized the fastest way to change is to laugh at your own folly. Then you can let go and quickly move on. He knew he had learned something useful about moving on from his mice friend Sniff and Scurry. They kept life simple, they didn't overanalyze or overcomplicate things. When the situation changed and the cheese had been moved, they changed and moved with the cheese. He would remember that. Haw had also used his wonderful brain to do what little people do better than mice.